Well, facing the most critical days of his 50-year political career, a defiant and motivated President Biden railed against a fast-growing number of Democrats and allies, calling for him to drop out of the race. Some of them reportedly wanted him out by this Friday. They had a day in mind. Biden fired off a letter to Democrats in Congress this morning saying he will stay in the race until the end. He then came out swinging. He actually called into MSNBC, called on his phone, and denounced the calls live, saying that the voters are behind him.
I'm more than presumption. I'm going to be the Democratic nominee. The bottom line here is that we're not going anywhere. I am not going anywhere. I wouldn't be running if I didn't absolutely believe that I am the best candidate to beat Donald Trump in 2024.
The president even dared his Democratic critics who want him out to challenge him at the August convention.
I'm getting so frustrated by the elites. Now, I'm not talking about you guys, but about the elites in the party who they know so much more. But if any of these guys don't think I should run against me, go ahead, announce for president. Challenge me at the convention.
Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany, here with my co-host, Emily Compagno. Also joining us, Fox News contributor Lisa Booth, Fox News contributor and the Federalist editor-in-chief, Molly Hemingway, and former Army intelligence captain and Veterans on Duty chairman, Jeremy Hunt. Well, this hour, Emily, in fact, at any moment, we're going to take remarks from the First Lady, Jill Biden. She's in Wilmington, North Carolina. She was shouted at by reporters. She's about to speak. You're looking at this live. Reporters shouted at her. They said, "Is Biden staying in the race?" To which she did not answer. I think she's speaking now. Let's listen live.
North Carolina, you have shown me your heart, and I thank you so much. And thank you, Jason, from your time in uniform to your work at the state and federal level to supporting military families and veterans. Few people know this community in North Carolina as well as you do. So thank you for your support for Joe. And I'm glad to be joined by Mayor Sacco. Bill, you know how to build consensus and keep Wilmington moving forward. I appreciate your being here. So it's great to be back in North Carolina. To Fort Liberty, to Cherry Point, and through difficult days and times of joy. I've been honored to learn from you and to shine a light on your stories. This is a special community, and you all help keep it strong. 4 years ago, Joe went from being a military father to being commander-in-chief. It's a responsibility he stepped into with pride. Because as Joe reminds everyone, any chance he gets, our U.S. military is the finest fighting military force in the history of the world. Of all the obligations that Joe has shouldered since he took his oath of office.
So that was a little bit of First Lady Jill Biden there in Wilmington, North Carolina. As Molly Hemingway pointed out, we believe she said Delaware. I know they're used to being in Delaware, but this is indeed North Carolina, and this is before she goes to Tampa, Florida, and hits another city on support of her husband, the president, who doubled down and said he is staying in no uncertain terms. You know, Emily, this is clearly a part of the strategy. She's one of his top surrogates. She is out there, and she's also, according to all the reporting, privately saying, we're not getting out of this, Joe.
Right, and prior reports before the disastrous debate, before the follow-up interview with ABC, were noting how much more robust her campaigning was than President Biden himself, number one. And number two, there had in fact been expose articles essentially saying, look, she's the driving force. Critics arguing that there was a refusal to sort of relinquish power in that way. But now, on the heels of the things that I just cited, those two events in particular, then it sort of smacks of an interesting lack of awareness of what's going on. We wonder if she's going to address it, to your point earlier, when asked, well, she didn't reply. At the end of the day, the question remains, well, we've sort of been in an emperor's new clothes position this whole time. Now there's a growing groundswell of Democrats who clearly feel safe calling for the president to step aside and having a new candidate. Well, there's not been any reply formally yet from Dr. Jill Biden, which it seems perhaps that she is the one at the helm.
Lisa, all of this intended to put pressure on congressional Democrats. There's the letter that went out from Biden this morning. There's the call into Morning Joe. Jill Biden, these images out on the trail. Notably, as House members return to the Hill, will be chased down by reporters to ask, should Joe stay in the race?
Yeah, and this letter to Congress is smart because clearly he's trying to get ahead of members of Congress reconvening after recess. There was that report that Senator Warner was trying to coalesce Senate Democrats and potentially trying to push Joe Biden out of the race. Now that is over, allegedly, at least reportedly. So it looks like absent an act of God, Joe Biden is in this thing. I mean, this letter to his party basically says, go pound sand. I'm the presumptive nominee. He says I've gotten 14 million of the votes, 3,900 delegates. He talks about how 87% of the delegates have already been cast for him. I'm your presumptive nominee. And then the options to try to force him out just aren't there. I mean, the 25th Amendment is nonsensical. Impeachment's not going to happen. And then any sort of political process with a brokered convention is very, very messy and also likely isn't going to happen. So, good luck, Democrats. This is, you get what you asked for, I guess. Good luck with Joe Biden.
Well, we have a lot of breaking news this hour. You're looking at part of it. And there's no one better to speak with today than former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Speaker McCarthy, I thought of you immediately this morning. You have led a delegation. You have represented Republicans. And I read in Politico Playbook, part of the job when you're in leadership is to make tough decisions and to listen to your members. And I immediately thought about Hakeem Jeffries, someone we haven't heard from. He was on a 2-hour call yesterday. Some of his members said it's time for Joe Biden to step aside. What do you predict Hakeem Jeffries, House Minority Leader, does in this moment?
Hakeem hates to make a decision. He'll never make a fast decision. He's doing exactly what he normally does, nothing. There's two types of leaders. You're either a thermometer or a thermostat. A thermostat can tell you the temperature and change it. Hakeem's a thermometer. He sits and lets the caucus decide where to go. And that's why you're seeing it on the House. A lot of members come out against Biden. And in the Senate, you really don't have much. Not strong leadership. And he'll let the caucus get in front of him instead of stepping in front. That's why you see Joe Biden going out early before the members coming back into Congress and stating he's in this race. And I think his interview with Stephanopoulos, the two big questions that I take are really directly to Democrats. The only way I'm getting out of this race is God Almighty tells me to, and I don't care if I lose because I think I gave it my very best. And you seeing Jill out there, she's a hard campaigner. I will tell you it's much different of why I know that they're going to stay in this race. Jill doesn't want to leave either. Many times when we had meetings in the Oval Office, Jill was there as well.
Interesting. Wait, so the First Lady was in some of your meetings about policy?
Many times Jill would come in. There was one time when I'd sit there and the president said something on in this famous tour down to the pool saying, do you want to go outside? Jill turns very quickly when she hears that and says, no, they don't want to go outside, because she knew exactly what position he was in and what he was doing. And then he just turns around. You don't want to go outside? And then let us outside. Many times, I don't think she's there for policy. I think she's there to give him comfort and direct the meetings.
That's stunning. That's stunning. I cannot imagine First Lady Melania Trump on a policy meeting. I never once saw that happen. But what you said echoes reporting from New York Magazine that Jill led him in front of a donor, literally coaching him with what to say, how to speak. She's running the show.
Look, I've been talking about this for more than a year. I've watched its decline. Every meeting I've had with this president has been different, and they would attack me because of it. This is a pattern of behavior you watched with the Hunter Biden laptop. I expect President Biden to call Secretary of State Blinken to go get 51 physicians to sign a letter that says he's cognitively fine and put that out, and then go after the media to say, you can't print about this. I mean, the real question here is this is becoming their Watergate. Who knew it, and when did they know it, and what did they do? I mean, if you think of the vice president, she was one of the most fierce attacks against us whenever we brought this up. So did she not know this was going on? That would disqualify her to become president if she couldn't figure out this was happening. And then it would also disqualify her to be the nominee if she did and wouldn't share with the American public.
You know, you mentioned this is their Watergate. I think you could be right on that. So the question becomes, what do Republicans do? Should there be a select committee into Biden's mental health the way there was one into January 6th? What does Congress do? What do Republicans do today?
Well, the thing I do, I wouldn't play politics with it. Let's be very sensitive about how we go about doing this. If I was President Trump, do exactly what he is doing. And at any given time, you see he is better prepared to be president than at any other time. He's disciplined. He's focused on the issue. Secure this border. Curb inflation. Make America strong again of where we're going. Stick on the issues. But for Republicans and Democrats in the House and Senate, this is a serious position that you have a president this week. You have NATO coming in. Why do we have war in Ukraine? Did Putin pick up on this when he met with Biden? Did Biden make those wrong decisions in Afghanistan because of this situation? We do need, and the American public has a right to know. So this is a place that you shouldn't make it partisan, but Republicans and Democrats should bound together to get to the answers. The American public deserve to know the answers to these questions.
Indeed, they do, especially because every hostile service death in Afghanistan and Jordan took place outside of the hours in which Biden is dependably engaged. That's per Axios. Thank you so much, Speaker McCarthy.
Thank you.
You know, Molly, I'm stunned, and perhaps you saw my mouth a little agape as he talked about the First Lady sitting in on policy meetings. He saw it.
Well, I feel like a lot of Americans have seen this for a long time, not just the people who are in private meetings with the president, but people who are watching all of the videos or audio of the president over the last year or even maybe 4 years. And so it's kind of interesting to watch all this hysteria going on right now because half the country or more have known about this. And it's like we're all supposed to be hysterical because the media decided to start being a little more honest about what's going on. But I do think, you know, what's interesting here is we're all talking about whether President Biden should be the nominee in 2024. If all of this stuff is legitimately a big issue, isn't the only question we should be talking about whether he should be president? And he's in charge of the troops right now. Talking about, you know, how things will be years from now. If it's really a problem, and the way to sort of test whether people are being legitimate about this or not is whether they're focused mostly on the presidency or whether they're just trying to save their tushes for the 2024 election.
Great point.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one thing that's concerning, too, is that when you hear, even from some of the top Democrats who have called on Biden to get out of the race, they always start by this prefacing by saying, you know, protect your legacy, you know, stand on your record of accomplishments and step aside. And I just think, what legacy? I mean, his legacy has been a story of failure. I mean, failure at the border, millions of illegal immigrants pouring through, drugs pouring through, our young people overdosing on fentanyl. I mean, his legacy has been failure on the international scale, cozying up to Iran, which has empowered Hezbollah and Hamas attacking Israel. And he did not end Putin, as he so claimed. In fact, Putin just attacked the children's hospital in the last 24 hours. I mean, it has been a total disaster on a global stage, and it's been failure. And I honestly think that years from now, I think that he would actually prefer the story be about, when he loses in November, he would probably prefer the narrative be that he was this aged, you know, man that probably should have stepped aside a little sooner, because that's a much better narrative than the truth, which is that his whole legacy has been a story of failure from the start.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And he stopped Putin. Remember, he said that to your point. He said Putin invaded a sovereign country. Don't forget that.
Let's news to Putin, though.
That's news to Putin. All right.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.